Okay, welcome everyone. And today we'll be talking about the functions of an entrepreneur. Previously, we discussed the character traits of an entrepreneur, the advantages, disadvantages, and roles of entrepreneurship in economic development. We will be discussing the functions of an entrepreneur today. In order for the entrepreneur to meaningfully contribute towards economic development, some essential functions must be performed. The entrepreneur essentially has five functions. One, risk taking. Two, management decision making. Three, production. Four, strategic planning and marketing management. Now let's explain them in details. Let's start with number one, risk taking. We have identified that willingness to take risk was one of the characteristics of an entrepreneur. This characteristic stands an entrepreneur out from among the people, just as it is one of the important functions performed by him. Any entrepreneur is a risk taker. They take calculated risk, whether formally or informally. Mostly they take risk informally because they make calculations within their brain on what to buy, on what to keep, on the selling options they have, or whether they will sell later or whether they will keep it now. These are um, these are what we call calculated risk, informally calculated risk that the entrepreneur takes. They equally try to figure out the probability of success of their business. Once they are convinced that it is high, they will they will they will of course go into such business, which means they take risk. Now entrepreneurs calculate his risk by asking the following questions. One, is the goal worth the risk? Two, what information do I need before I take the risk? Three, why is this risk important? Four, am I willing to try my best to achieve the goal? Five, what preparation do I need to make first before I take the risk? Six, what are the biggest obstacles to achieving my goal? You see, these questions require specific answers, and those answers will spur the entrepreneur. Those answers will spur the entrepreneur to take that risk. So we said the first function of an entrepreneur is risk taking. The second function of an entrepreneur is management decision making. Decision making covers all management functions, namely planning, organizing, decision making, staffing, leading, motivating, communicating, and controlling. So these management functions all put together make up management decision making. Of course, it's important to understand each of these management functions as they all make up management decision making function of the entrepreneur. So now let's explain these management functions, decision making functions briefly. Let's start with planning as a management function. Planning is a must for every business enterprise operating in a dynamic environment. What is the definition of planning? Authors have defined planning in various ways. One of the definition of planning is involved in selecting missions and objectives and deciding on the actions to achieve them. It also requires decision making, that is, choosing a course of action from among alternatives. Another definition is that planning is involved in the activities by which managers analyze present conditions to determine ways of reaching a desired future state. We can safely say that planning provides a rational approach to achieving pre-selected objectives. It is concerned then with the ends, that is, what is to be done, as well as the means, which is how it is to be done. Planning can be informal or formal. When we say planning is informal, what do we mean? In informal planning, nothing is written down and there's little or no sharing of objectives with others in the organization. And then when we say planning is formal, what do we mean? As regards formal planning, the objectives covering a period of years are defined. These objectives are written and made available to organizational members. All right, every member of the organization becomes aware because it's a formal planning. Finally, specific action programs exist for the achievement of the objectives. That is, managers clearly define the path they want to take or follow to get organization from where it is to where they want it to be. Okay, what are the features of planning? Planning is characterized by the following features. 1, it must be realistic and capable of implementation. 2, it must be comprehensive. 3, it must have clearly defined objectives in terms of scope of the objectives, the accuracy of the objective, clarity, and definitiveness. Right? Now, 4, it must be flexible. Of course, it has to be flexible. 5, it must be futuristic. 6, it must relate to conditions of relative certainty and uncertainty. And then finally, 7, it must be of a continuous process. What is the purpose of planning? Why should managers plan? Scholars have stated at least 4 reasons why managers should plan. And according to them, the first reason is that it gives direction. Planning gives direction. 2, it reduces the impact of change. 3, it minimizes waste and redundancy. And finally, 4, it sets standards used in controlling. Let's explain this a bit. Let's just explain them briefly. So when we say planning establishes coordinated efforts, what do we mean? Planning establishes coordinated effort. It gives direction to managers and non-managers alike. When employees know where organization is going and what they must contribute to reach that objective, they can coordinate their activities properly. They can cooperate with each other smoothly and work in teams. Without planning, departments might work at cross purposes, preventing the organization from moving effectively towards its objectives. Planning reduces uncertainty by forcing managers to look ahead, anticipate change, consider the impact of change, and develop appropriate responses to these changes. It also clarifies the consequences of actions managers might take in response to change. Planning reduces overlapping and wasteful activities. All right, what do we mean by that? Coordination before the fact is likely to pinpoint waste and redundancy. Furthermore, when means and ends are clear, inefficiencies become obvious and can be corrected and eliminated. Finally, planning establishes objectives or standards that are used in controlling. If we were unsure of what we are trying to achieve, how can we determine whether we have actually achieved it? In planning, we develop the objectives, identify any significant deviation, and take necessary corrective action. Without planning, there would be no way to control. Okay, now let's talk about the planning process. Planning process has to do with a logic set of steps a manager must take in order to find ways of reaching desired future objective. In planning process, the first step to consider is 1, the identification of goal of the organization, upon which plan will be built. In other words, management must have an overall goal in mind before the organization even comes into existence. Number 2, the planning process must be continuously reviewed and revised where necessary. Now let's talk about organizing as a management function. Organizing as a management function. Organizing involves the establishment of an intentional structure of roles through determination of the activities required to achieve the goals of an organization and each part of it. The grouping of these activities, the assignment of such groups of activities to an entrepreneur, the delegation of authority to carry them out, provision for coordination of authority, and informational relationships horizontally and vertically in the organizational or organization structure. Scholars have therefore defined organization as the process through which the structure of an organization or enterprise is created and maintained. Now, let's talk about decision making as a management function. Remember, we're talking about management decision function as a function of the entrepreneur, and we broke them down into several aspects of management functions within that entrepreneurial function. And now we are at management function. We are at decision making as a management function. A decision can be described as an act, but an act requiring judgment. So it's not just an act, but an act that requires judgment. An entrepreneur plays series of roles, including interpersonal, informational, and directional role. The status causes all managers to be involved in the interpersonal relationships with subordinates, with their peers, and superiors, who in turn provide managers with the information needed to make decisions. Managers need information to make intelligent decisions, and other members of the enterprise depend on such information received from or transmitted through the managers. Information is therefore the basic input in decision making. Decision making requires analytical and conceptual thoughts. Now, staffing as a management function. Staffing involves filing and keeping filed the positions provided for by the enterprise structure. It requires defining workforce requirements for the job to be done, and it includes inventorying, appraising, selecting candidates for positions, compensating and training, or otherwise developing both candidates for position and compensating and training positions holders to do their task effectively. For staffing to be effectively carried out, there is need for job analysis, job description, and job specification. Now let's talk about leading as a management function. Leadership is the notion that leaders are individuals who, by their action, facilitate the movement of a group of people towards a common or shared goals. Now, that is a definition by some authors. Since leadership implies followership, and people tend to follow those in whom they see as a means of satisfying their own needs, wishes, and desires, it is understandable that this area of management involves motivation, leadership style and approaches, and effective communication. The leader is the individual. Leadership is a function or activity the individual performs. Now, what are the factors that can enhance leadership? 1. Respect for individuals. 2. Delegate authority and responsibility. 3. Excellence. 4. Build workers' self-esteem. 5. Inform employees. 6. Apply the reinforce principle. 7. Be an active listener. To be an effective leader, one must try to see things through the eye of those he is leading. That is what being a leader or leadership or leader as a management function entails. Let's move to motivating as a management function. Motivation is defined as the process of stimulating the interest of people to do something. Motivated behavior has 3 characteristics. 1, it is sustained and maintained for a long time until satisfied. 2, it is goal directed and seeks to achieve an objective. 3, it results from a felt need. For every enterprise to motivate an employee, there must be 1, need that the employee wishes to satisfy. The motivating factor must be one that needs the desire or aspiration of the employee. The goal must be perceived as being available, and that the goal must be attainable by the employee. These are the only conditions upon which an enterprise can motivate an employee. Now, communicating as a management function. Every enterprise that exists definitely exists through communication, and without communication, there will be no organization. In modern enterprises and organizations, communication is the foundation upon which all other functions rest. This is because when communication fails, no activity prevails. Nothing can be done. Organizational communication is the process by which managers develop a system to give information and transmit meaning to a large number of people within the organization and to the relevant individuals and institutions outside of that organization. In other words, what we really mean? communication is the transfer of information from the sender through the communication channel to the receiver, with the information being understood by the receiver. Once there is no understanding, communication is not done. Okay, so the process of communication includes encoding. And what is encoding? Encoding simply means who is the originator of the message in spoken or in written form. And then we talk about channel. Channel simply means which is the means by which the information gets to the decoder and the decoder. Who is the decoder? This is the receiver of the information sent by the encoder. All right. So the function of communication are to enable employees to express themselves, to motivate the activities of subordinates, to serve as vital functions for managerial decision making. It is therefore the vehicle through which the basic management functions are carried out. So all those functions we've been listing and talking about, planning, decision making, staffing, and so on, they are just irrelevant if there is no communication. The purpose served by communication in an organization includes it serves as a lubricant to foster the smooth operation of the management progress. It is a vehicle through which basic management are carried out. Now let's talk about controlling as a management function. Control means to check or verify, to regulate, to compare with a standard, to exercise authority over, or to curb or restrain. All right, so controlling is the process of measuring performance against standard. Controlling is the process of measuring performance against standard. It is the process of measuring and correcting individuals or organizational performance to ensure that if events conform to plan, it shows where deviations from standard exist and helps to correct them. Now, scholars see managerial control as the monitoring and adjusting of organizational activities towards effective and efficient goal attainment. In essence, what is controlling? In essence, the essential purpose of controlling is to ensure that actions do indeed conform to plans and contribute towards the accomplishment of goals, which is to say that through a well-coordinated control system, individual managers are enabled to meet their accountability. Okay, now the steps in a control process include: 1. Establishment of standard. 2. Assessment of performance. 3. Comparing performance against standard. And finally, 4. Evaluation and adjustments. The reason for controlling function is: 1. To check actual performance against set standard. 2. To ensure that the objective of the organization is carried out. 3. To sort out deviations and mistakes in the system. And 4. To ensure proper functioning of the enterprise. Then 5. To ensure the steering and guiding of the enterprise in the right direction. There are 4 basic areas where control is necessary, and they are: 1. Financial resources. 2. Physical resources. 3. Human resources. And finally, 4. Information resources. Now, the attributes of a good control process include: 1. Flexibility. 2. Objectivity. 3. Economy. 4. Accuracy. 5. Corrective, and integrity, which is the last. Sometimes controls are resisted due to these reasons: 1. Unnecessary bossing, just boss people around. 2. Over control. 3. Non-seriousness, people just perceive you as not being serious or see an organization as not being serious. 4. Rewarding inefficiency and mediocrity. And then 5. Accountability. So these are some of the reasons, or these are sometimes the reasons why control are resisted. That is that about the management decision making as a function of an entrepreneur. Now, the third function of an entrepreneur is production. The third function of an entrepreneur is production. We've talked about the first function as a risk-taking, the second one as management decision-making. The third one we're about to discuss now is Production. Production is the transformation of input, such as raw materials, through the transformation process to produce outputs, such as finished goods or services that are available and highly affordable. The duty of an entrepreneur is to harness all human and material resources with a view to improving production and distribution efficiency, such that goods get to the final consumers in good time. The entrepreneur also ensures proper inventory management so as to minimize in total the costs associated with stocks. And then we know that when you overstock, it's not good. Overstocking are stocks which are excess to current needs, and it results in capital being tied down or tied up and increased cost of storage and obsolescence. Understocking, on the other hand, may result in the costly production holdups, which may mean increased cost of goods. It also interrupts production, making machines and men idle and causing sales loss in the period in which you go sorting out those particular materials that are understocked. Okay, so you see overstocking, understocking can be harmful to production. Now, the fourth function of an entrepreneur is strategic planning. Strategic planning describes or is described as a disciplined effort to produce fundamental decisions and actions that shape and guide what an organization is, what it does, and why it does it. All right. So, with a focus on the future, whenever you mention strategic planning or strategy, always remember that it is also always focused on the future. A word by word dissection of this definition, as we mentioned earlier, provides the key elements that underline the meaning and success of strategic planning process. And they are: the process is strategic because it involves preparing the best way to respond to the circumstances of the organizational environment, whether or not its circumstances are known in advance. Now, what are the core areas of strategy? There are actually three core areas of corporate strategy. The first one is strategic analysis. The second is strategy development. And the third is strategy implementation. Let's just explain them briefly. Strategic analysis. In strategic analysis, the organization, its mission and objectives have to be examined and analyzed. All right? Corporate strategy provides value for the people involved in the organization, its stakeholders, but it is often the senior managers who develop the view of the organization's overall objective in the broadest possible terms. They conduct an examination of the objectives and organization's relationship with its environment. They also analyze the resources of the organization. Now, the second is the strategy development. The strategy option have to be developed and then selected. To be successful, the strategy is likely to be built on particular skills of the organization and the special relationship that it has or can develop with those outside the organization. That is, it's the suppliers, it's the government, distributors, and so on. For many organizations, this will mean developing advantages over competitors that is sustainable over time. There are usually many options available, and one or more will have to be selected. And the third is strategy implementation. In strategy implementation, the selected option now have to be implemented. There may be major difficulties in terms of motivation, power relationship, government negotiation, company acquisition, and many other matters. A strategy that cannot be implemented is not worth the paper it is written on. Another function of an entrepreneur is marketing management. Marketing management is the process of planning and executing the conception, pricing, promotion, and distribution of ideas, goods, and services to create exchange that satisfy individual and organizational goals. Marketing management is also defined as the analysis, planning, implementation, and control of programs designed to create, build, and maintain beneficial exchanges with target buyers for the purpose of achieving organizational objectives. People think of marketing management as finding enough customers for companies' current output, but this is too limited a view, right? From these definitions, the following terms needs some explanation. One, need, want, demand, product, exchange, and some other concepts. So let's look at these concepts a bit before we round up this session. What does the concept need mean? The most basic concept underlying marketing is that of human need. Human needs are states of felt deprivation. These needs include basic physical needs for food, clothing, shelter, safety, social needs for belonging and affection, and individual needs for knowledge and self-expression. The needs are inbuilt in human nature itself. It is not invented by marketers. We could say needs are human desires that could be threatening in one way or the other if not met. Okay, we can say wants are can be described as human desires for specific satisfaction of deeper needs. For example, a man in the village needs rain and food and may want fertilizer. So you see, needs are things you may not be able to do without, wants are things you may be able to do without. Also, a man may want yam, rice, body cream, a bag, a wristwatch, and so on. But such a person needs money to achieve this. So you see, needs are human desires that, if not met, have consequences. But wants are human desires as well, but they do not. If you don't get them, they do not have much consequences. These wants are continual. These ones are continually shaped and reshaped by social forces and institutions such as the family, church, schools, and business corporation. Marketers do not create needs. Needs pre-exists in marketing. So marketers, along with other operatives in the society, influence wants. They suggest and inform consumers about certain products and persuade them to purchase, stressing the benefits of such products. Another concept we have to talk about at this point is demand. Demand has been defined as the total quantity of goods and services which an individual is willing and able to pay for at a particular time. For example, many may desire a car, such as the Mercedes Benz, the Toyotas, the Lexuses, the Hondas, and so on, but only a few are really willing and able to buy any of them. So those that are able to put that money for them are those that we can ascribe demand to. Okay, another concept we need to talk about is products. People normally satisfy their wants and needs with products offered in the market. So we can say, broadly speaking, a product can be defined as anything that can be offered to someone to satisfy a need or want. Now, specifically, a product can be defined as an object, service, activity, person, place, organization, or an idea. It should be noted that people do not buy physical objects for their own sake. For example, an eye pencil is bought to supply service for beautification. Toothpaste is supplied to prevent or used to prevent germs or give fresh breath. So the marketer's job is to sell the service packages built into physical products. Another concept again we'll be talking about at this time is exchange. Marketing takes place when people decide to satisfy needs and wants through exchange. Exchange is therefore the act of obtaining a desired object from someone by offering something in return. Exchange is only one of the many ways people can obtain a desired object. For example, hungry people can find food by hunting, fishing, or gathering fruits. They could offer money, any other food, or a service in return for food. However, we know the notable Cutler in marketing. Cutler states that for exchange to take place, it must satisfy 5 conditions. One, there are at least there must be at least 2 parties. Two, each party has something that might be of value to the other. Three, each party is capable of communication and delivery. Four, each party is free to accept or reject the offer. Five, each party believes it is appropriate or desirable to deal with the other party. These five conditions make exchange possible. Whether exchange actually takes place, however, depends on the parties coming to an agreement. It is often concluded that the act of exchange has left both of them better off, or at least not worse off. Hence, exchange creates value just as production creates value. Another concept is relationship marketing. Relationship marketing is the process of creating, maintaining, and enhancing strong value added relationship with customers and other stakeholders. Another concept is markets. What do we mean by a market? A market is defined as a set of all actual and potential buyers of a product and service. These buyers share particular needs or wants that can be satisfied through exchange. The size of a market depends on the needs of the people with common needs and that has resources to engage in exchange and is willing to offer these resources in exchange for what they want. Originally, the term market stood for the place where buyers and sellers gather to exchange their goods, such as a village square or a corner of a community. However, economists often use the term to refer to a collection of buyers and sellers who transact in a particular product class, such as clothing market, electronic market, cattle market, and so on. Now, what are the functions of marketing? The functions of marketing can be classified into three, namely one, merchandising function, physical distribution, and auxiliary function. Let's briefly explain them as we round off. The merchandising function comprises of product planning and development, standardization and grading, buying and assembling, selling, and so on. Now, the physical distribution comprises of storage, transportation. Storage simply means storing of goods to meet future needs and for time and other utilities, while transportation simply means the movement of goods from the manufacturer down to the target consumers. These include material handling and warehousing. The auxiliary function comprises of marketing financing or marketing finance, risk bearing, market information. Market Marketing finance, that is allowing credit to customers as well as obtaining credit from customers such as banks and so on. While risk bearing involves risk, which is uncertainties. Entering into a business entails risk, of course, such as loss of items, roads, attacks, and so on, weather risk, and so on. Now we have market information, which means gathering of information about the market, target consumers in terms of their purchasing power, taste, and so on, competition, and their product. Now, what is the role of marketing? Number one, the first and foremost role is that it stimulates potential aggregate demand and enlarges the size of the market. You might ask, the next question is, how does it help in the economic growth of a country? The answer is that through stimulation of demand, people are motivated to work harder and earn additional money, which is income, to buy various ideas, goods, services being marketed. An additional advantage which accrues in the above context is that it accelerates the process of monetizing the economy. So that way it affects the economy. The second is it helps in discovery of entrepreneurial talents. Like we also hear in the marketing palace, marketing is a multiplier of managers and entrepreneurs. And the third is that it helps in sustaining and improving the existing levels of employment. You may ask, how does it do this? The answer is that when a country advances economically, it takes more and more people to distribute goods and proportionately a lesser number to make them. That is, from the employment point of view, production becomes relatively less significant than marketing and the related services of transportation, financing, communication, insurance, and so on, which springs around it. Now, let's discuss the marketing management philosophy. Marketing management has been described as carrying out tasks to achieve desired exchange. with target market. But then, what philosophy should guide these activities? What weight should be given to the interest of the organization, the customers, and the society that carry out these activities? Now, let's talk about the 5 philosophies that underlines the marketing activities. The first is production concept. The production concept holds that consumers prefer affordable and available products. Therefore, management should focus on improving production and distribution efficiency. This concept is applicable when demand exceeds supply or product costs are high. The second marketing management philosophy is the product concept. The product concept holds that consumers favor products with quality, performance, and innovation. Organizations should continuously improve products. Organizations like Toyota and Honda applied this concept in Nigeria. Hospitality services varied based on guest expectation, and this is to illustrate this particular concept. The third is selling concept. The selling concept or sales concept is another common approach adopted by some firms in penetrating their target market. The selling concept holds that it assumes that consumers will not buy enough without aggressive selling. Now, number 4, marketing concept. The marketing concept is a business philosophy that arose to challenge the previous concepts. The marketing concept holds that the key to achieving goals is understanding and satisfying consumer needs better than competitors. It also involves market focus, customer orientation, coordinated marketing efforts, and profitability. It also holds that there's a construct, or will I call it a contrast, with the selling concept by focusing on long-term customer satisfaction and profitability. And the last is societal marketing concept. This is similar to the marketing concept but emphasizes meeting societal expectations and needs. It also aims for effective and efficient satisfaction of both market and societal needs. All right, that's about it for today. I hope to see you in my next class.